Tablet 29, Purification and Spiritual Practice. 19 by 9, Google 171. Lo, Nuwapians, I am about to take you on a journey to learning the importance of purification and spiritual practice. You must always remember that you shall always take care of your spirit, and the first step is to take care of your physical body, which houses the spirit. 3 basic steps involved in spiritual practice are severely simple living, self-study, surrender to Eloh, the Most High. Austerity does not mean physical abuse or severe rigors. It refers to strict control for the senses in order to conserve energy for higher pursuits. Austerity in this sense means fasting occasionally, rise earlier instead of sleeping late, and reducing certain physical comforts for the sake of greater control of the mind. What keeps the mind flowing in the desired direction? Surrendering to Eloh, the Most High's will. One also surrenders the fruits of work performed. This is selfless, where one regards oneself as the instrument of Eloh, and it serves humanity with no thought of either credit or blame. Eloh does not work for you, he works with you. Ignorance is the unawareness of reality. You can't really ignore a talking and moving person. It is identification with the temporal world rather than with the imperishable self. Egoism is the I-ness and my-ness, which creates the illusion that the physical body is the real you. Likes, dislikes. When a person is swayed by feelings of attraction and aversion, he or she is identifying with the material world, and he is setting him or herself up for the pain of loss and disappointment. Fear of death, or clinging to life, is binding and stiffening. None can say when death will come. Fear of death is useless imagination, a waste of energy, and it creates waves of pain, which exist only in the mind. Ignorance is the cause of the above-mentioned afflictions which follow it, whether they be latent, or weak, or suppressed, or aggravated. The suffering which comes from egoism, attractions, repulsion, and fear of death all stem from ignorance, regardless of the degree in which they manifest. As the root of the other obstacles, ignorance of the true nature of the self is the identification with the body and mind. When ignorance is replaced by enlightenment, all other causes of pain automatically disappear. When in a state of ignorance, if an enocyte mistakes what is mundane for what is supreme, he or she cannot differentiate between that which will bring pain to the mind and body and that which will bring immortality. Egoism is manifest when the individual cannot distinguish his or herself from his or her senses and mind. He or she sees him or herself as separate from the rest of the enocytes, reacting to others with a sense of competition rather than cooperation. Attraction is that which dwells on pleasure. Most think of attraction and pleasure as positive things, but when associated with objects of the material world, they inevitably bring pain. Nothing in the physical world is permanent. Hence the constant fear of loss, and loss itself keeps those seeking pleasure in an unhappy state. This is why the spiritual person learns to cultivate a dislike for worldly pleasures. In the event he or she is never disappointed or unhappy. The result, ironically, is that by not seeking pleasure, he or she is always happy. Just as attraction brings pain, so does aversion. The mental attitude of aversion is a negative one, and it often makes a neutral situation appear as if it were one to be avoided. It is not possible to avoid all distasteful circumstances. When there are likes and dislikes, a person cannot be happy. He or she is dwelling on illusory pairs of opposites, rather than learning to be content in all situations and surrendering to Eloh's plan for his or her growth. Fear of death is the continuous desire to live, which is rooted even in the minds of the wise. The fear of death is the fear of the loss of identity, of letting go of the ego. Even when all else is given up, there is still the clinging to life. When these various afflictions are a distraction to the aspirant, they can be merged back into their cause by substituting the opposite mental modifications. For example, if egotistical thoughts arise, they can be combated by focusing on the all and you being a part of a much greater love. If feelings of attraction or avoidance enter the mind, then contentment or acceptance can be substituted. If the afflictions are overt and if there is a great distraction to the mind, they can be alleviated through regular meditation and prayer. The law of fate states that every action brings about an equal and opposite reaction. Whatever is done to others will return to the doer, and most people are continually creating new fatal situations. This is due to ignorance and its accompanying afflictions. Before final emancipation, all debts of fate must be worked out, whether one decides to do so in the present life or in a form of hell or on the lower planes, which are referred to as hell. Each must reap what he or she sows. Various life experiences are due to the situations of fate that has earned him or her by his or her thoughts, words, and deeds. They have pleasure or pain as their fruit, according to whether there is virtue or vice. Overstanding this, the spiritual person strives to do only agreeable actions and to accept peacefully the ill that comes his or her way, so that all his or her seeds of fate are burned and no new ones are sown. Violence to others, whether in thought or word or deed, must be avoided. Non-injury means more than refraining from inflicting physical pain. Mental pain can be far more devastating. When one is established in complete harmlessness, even wild animals will approach in peace. The function of truth is to maintain harmony through trust. It is better to be silent than to tell a truth that will cause pain or that springs from a wrong motive. A truthful person has power, for what he or she says comes to pass, and his or her words becomes law. Cleanliness also extends to the mind. Only when the mind is purified of all things can it be a pure mirror for clear reflections. Laughter comes from stimulation, but a smile comes from inner peacefulness. Satisfied with itself, the mind needs nothing else for its contentment, which it grows in proportion to awareness of the inner self. The mind should not be affected by external objects. They may be possessed, but with detachment. Do not let them possess the mind. Austerity means curtailing the insatiable demands of the senses. Drink water instead of bad drinks. Practice silence instead of talking loud. Control greed. Counteract sleep by getting up early. When the mind learns that its demands for pleasure will not be met through the senses, it stops its useless wandering and turns inward. Control of the senses clears the way for such powers as telepathy and clairvoyance. Study of spiritual works and the holy tablets helps to keep a person on the right path. The book alone, however, can only take one so far, and it can lead to intellectual pride. Surrender to the will of Eloh, the Most High, is necessary, for ultimately everything depends upon His grace. When negative or harmful thoughts disturb the mind, they can be overcome by constant pondering over their opposites. One must be ever alert, always watching the mind. When useless thought waves arise, immediately replace them with positive thoughts, thus creating new mental habits that are conducive to spiritual growth. Negative thoughts and emotions, such as violence, anger, or delusion, whether committed, abetted, or caused through greed, and whether present in mild, medium, or great intensity, result in endless pain and ignorance. Thus there is the necessity for pondering over the opposites. All thoughts, emotions, and actions that are in opposition to righteousness bring about the fate of further pain and ignorance. This is true, whether the action is actually carried out, remains in thought form, or is incited in others. Whatever the cause, whatever the degree of involvement, fate is still incurred. This is why it is necessary to substitute positive subliminal thoughts the moment negative ones are caught arising in the mind. One who is firmly rooted in nonviolence, this radiates this conviction to others. He or she is so powerful that not even violent thoughts can exist in his or her presence. The more a spiritual person flees from material objects, the more they seem to come to the inner sight. The purpose of this natural law is twofold. The first is so that he or she may be tested and confirmed in his or her renunciation. The second is so that he or she, as a wise person, may appropriately dispense the wealth to benefit an inner sight. An inner sight is ever searching for happiness in external objects, but it can only be attained when the mind is satisfied with what has been allotted and it is no longer looking for the attainment. When the mind is stilled and contented, happiness is automatic. When austerities, self-imposed disciplines are practiced, great will is developed, and the abilities of his or her physical body and senses are extended beyond what is considered normal. Only by surrendering one's will, one's ego, one's life to Eloh is the superconscious state attained. The reality of an object is due to the uniqueness of change. Each object on the material plane can be identified and called a reality. because it is made up of its own unique combination of the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. An object is not dependent on one's mind, for it still exists whether or not it is perceived by that mind. The soul absorbs all of the changes through in which the mind goes, because it is the external witness. All true knowledge exists permanently in the self, while the mind is constantly being modified by thought waves. The mind is something that can be observed as an object, and not the source of knowledge, just as Kingu, or called Sheshki, and lunar, which you call the moon, is not a source of light, but a reflection of Shamash, the sun. It cannot perceive two things at once. Even though thoughts are formed in a split second, still only one thought form exists in the mind at one time. So it is impossible for the mind to be perceiving itself while it perceives something else. If one mind could perceive another, then there would be cognition, awareness of cognition, as well as confusion of memory. If you enjoyed this content from the Holy Tablets, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to All Eyes on Egypt TV for more divine knowledge and breakdowns. Got a question or a thought to share? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you and keep the discussion going. This video is sponsored by AEOEbookstore.com, the largest selection of books authored by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Go check them out today and support the movement.